Critical Role just launched their second season of Exandria Unlimited, this time called Calamity. And they have brought in a new dungeon master, Brennan Mulligan, who, if anyone knows me and about this channel, I've done a whole video on Brennan Mulligan and why he is my favorite dungeon master. And oh my god, is this another masterclass? And seeing him DM Critical Role, I freaked out. I didn't even know the announcement. I had to just jump on here. I watched it and I had to make this video for you guys. So what did Brennan do in this episode to make some next level DM moves that you can take and learn from and use at your tables to take your games to the next level? That's what these DC breakdowns are all about. And we're diving right back into Exandria Unlimited. These actually, from what Marisha Ray herself said, that won't be more than 4 episodes. So we'll see if that means 3 or 4. Who knows? They're playing in a Calamity era, apocalyptic, about something bad's about to happen from the past. Basically, they're playing in the past from the current timeline of Critical Role, but you don't have to know anything about any of that to know some of these next level moves. So let's get right into it. And I got a sneak peek on some custom art that I'm excited to show you guys at the end. Here we go. So to start things off, Brennan does a classic Brennan Lee Mulligan signature start where he has a little, not flashback sequences, because it's definitely something that I loved and have used myself, of where you start off a campaign, or in this case, a 3-shot, 4-shot, whatever this is going to be, and you have individual spotlights to start things off with. You can do it in lots of different ways. I've done videos on different ways to start a campaign, but I really do love this signature move, and that Brennan brought this over to Critical Role. Absolutely loved it. Each player gets an individual highlight moment by themselves, and then he brings them together very masterfully, and I'll show the clip of them finally all coming together at the end. I'm not as familiar with the first player that was introduced, so I don't know how much roleplay experience they have. They did a great job, super loved them, and everyone else is definitely veterans, and it's all cool to see everybody get their chance in the spotlight to reveal their character. And Brennan takes it in a bunch of different directions. He starts the tone off with a very dark scene, and let's go ahead and get into that, and we'll break the rest of it down.
I need you to describe your character and tell us your character's name, but I would love for you to do that with the understanding that your mouth is filled with blood.
All right, well,
oh man. So they proceed to have a approximately like 20-minute long roleplay session back and forth between the two of them, going back. It was amazing to watch the play. It's intense, and it's setting the tone. And the Dungeon Master takeaway here is set the tone for your campaign. Like, what's it going to be? Are you running a survival horror thing? Or are you running a happy adventure thing? Or are you running a mystery thing? What are you doing? And man, oh man, Brennan set the tone for, I think, what's going to be this whole mini campaign here. Very beautifully so, and I absolutely loved it. But I want you to see the player's reaction at the table, because you might be hesitant as a Dungeon Master to give one player spotlight for so long. And I do think in certain settings, and know your table well enough of how long you can do this. So maybe at your table, this might be only like a 3-minute, 5-minute spotlight to really do something big. But watch the reaction at the table, because what happens in all of this, I'm not going to show the whole thing. It was a long thing. Brennan, role playing as this NPC, says this very ominous statement of, if the stars are below you, then what was above you? And here's a clip of the player finally looking up.
and I'm holding on to him.
Yeah.
And I look up.
You see the ground, and it is fast approaching.
What?
And with that,
Scene.
you wake up.
Oh, Daddy.
We can try this.
I think I'm in the wrong class.
I think I'm in the wrong class.
I thought this was freshman biology.
Oh my.
Look at Abriya.
Okay.
The first thing I do is I wipe my mouth and I see if there's blood.
Oh man, that's awesome. And just the players at the table have a reaction of what's going on. Like, all right, wait a second. And there's almost an anticipation too for the other players, especially if you know it's coming to you eventually. What's Brennan going to throw at you? Who knows, right? But he does also a good job, and I've taken notes on this before, of the different themes and tones. So he had a really dark start with one character introduction, and then he has a much more lighthearted start with another introduction. Sam's character is this like radio DJ bard type of TV personality, essentially, in this world. Very well done in the magic spin of this whole thing. I have a whole thing I'm going to talk about for the players of this show. Next week, I'm going to do a player breakdown breakdown of how the players elevate this thing to the next level, because this show is next level. Critical Role is next level, but it's not just Dungeon Masters doing their thing, it's also the players. And I want to highlight that a little bit too, because this whole episode is pretty much Brennan Lee Mulligan shout outs. But anyway, he ends up going around the table and highlighting the different spots in a very dark theme, followed by some humor, and then having an introduction to show and highlight the characters. And keep in mind, not only if I were to design this order, I would think of each of my characters, what am I going to do with them, it's just individually, and then I would think about sequencing them in order as far as put something dark, and then don't go dark, 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 and you got to mix it up and keep things kind of bopping around. So each player gets to come in, introduce themselves, and have their little cool moment, and also introduce some lore / backstory of these characters, maybe some NPCs that they're associated with, some history with their grandfathers and a statue. This style basically gives us as viewers insight into these players and where they came from, and the other players at the table, because when you first start playing, you don't have any previous sessions and relationship to build off of, even if your characters technically know each other from the past, and all of these 6 characters do know each other. So it does help the other players at the table to know and see some insight into who that character is, whether they're a goofball type thing or a very serious type person, or if they have some big past history with something else or whatever, and opportunities to sprinkle in NPCs connected to the backstories. Great opportunity, great start to this little mini campaign. Second clip here now is the biggest thing that Brennan did here that I want to highlight, that sparks and spawns so many other cool things, and it is a great tool as a dungeon master to grow your players, make them become better players. That's one thing I try and do as a dungeon master, is empower my players to feel more comfortable role playing, feel more comfortable being creative. A lot of times people have hesitations towards either of those things, and those are big parts of this game. So what Brennan does here is he puts his players on the spot with, what do you do? Role play moments. Like, all right, this thing's happening. How are y'all describing it? Like, what? Give me something. And like, he is asking them to do something. So for context, the players are about to arrive to a big party or gala, and he throws it at them for creative moments of, how do you guys arrive, right? And now that might be something I didn't think and pre-plan how my character arrives, but it gives the players an opportunity to put their own flavor and sprinkle some flavor onto each of their characters. Who wants to step up into the spotlight? Who doesn't? That allows the players that don't want to lay low and maybe think about what their character would do, and maybe say something simple if it comes to them, or if they want to, or they don't necessarily have to even say anything, because you can just kind of move things on. The Dungeon Master will sweep in there and be like, okay, and you all arrive, blah, blah, blah. But the players that love this type of stuff have an opportunity to step into that spotlight and do something cool. And when it comes to Sam does the same thing, and we'll get to a whole thing on that. So here's Brennan throwing it to the players.
As you all arrive, do all of you, does anyone care to describe their entrance into the party?
Quiet, silence, thinking.
Wow.
They're being challenged, they're being pushed. I love it.
I will. Yeah.
Hey, look at that timeout, a little mini timeout right here. Travis steps in. Do you see that moment? I really wanted to show that full moment of a awkward silence, if you want to call it that. But it's, I think just too many times Dungeon Masters are afraid of this awkward silence at the table. He's throwing it to them. I absolutely love that. I do this at my players at the table. All right, what about this? And like, let us sit there. And like, have that be an expectation, have that, and the more you do this, the more comfortable players will get with stepping up like this. And the moments that come from this question that Brennan had are some of the funniest moments that, I'll get to it with Sam. Sam really runs with this whole thing, but challenge your players like this and they will step up, and it's just so cool. And if, just as a side note, Brennan didn't have to do it here because Travis stepped in, but when you do ask this question, have some things like, y'all can describe if you do you arrive with somebody, and like have some little prompts that you can help in after probably like 8 seconds, 10 seconds, depends on how long you're comfortable with doing it. From a teaching background, technically it's 11 seconds, but that always felt long. So anyway, you can have something to kind of also like give them little prompts and see if somebody steps up to the plate for it, and then see what they do. But here we go with Travis.
Sarah obviously likes to fly in. He likes to just do a couple circles around the gala just to see who's taking their time, who's talking to who.
And it's super simple, and it's just that is him and this bird, all the little mannerisms that he does with this character, and this like a surveillance observant, like super observant, and he has a little flavor moment to describe that to arrive to a party. So now after Travis is done with his intro, this is a great moment because it gave the other 5 players at the table a chance to think about what they would do, because Brennan now they have a heads up of like, oh, wait, how do I arrive? How would my character arrive? And they can either take that moment to listen in and soak in what Travis is doing, which they will do. They will hear some things, but you can also take that moment to think about, well, how would I do it? What would I do? Do I do anything? If nothing comes to mind, okay, you don't have to. That's the cool part about this. You're not being forced to. It's not like he said, we're going to go around the table. I'm going to force, that's not that way it is. It's a very open, relaxed thing. Here's another thing after that wraps up.
Who else arrives?
Before I arrive,
jumps right in.
One of my the Herald's Tome, my newspaper.
So now Sam jumps in, and oh my gosh, if Brennan never asked Sam how he came in, he would have never created the NPC Bolo. And if you don't know who Bolo is, stay tuned for next week's episode, because I'm going to break down Bolo and what Sam did, what Brennan did, what Travis did to make some next level things that you can, oh my gosh, players, please do this type of stuff across the board. It's such an awesome moment. This one moment that I'm going to have a whole video for, of Sam saying he comes to the party, he arrives at the party, he gets there, and then all this stuff happening of how he gets there, and the funny little moments he's able to do with it. And then he's asked, oh, do you have the +1? And then he does have a +1, and they create the +1, and wow. So Sam basically creates an NPC on the spot that Brennan then has to run, and Brennan does something hilarious. So anyway, you give your players a chance to show the flavor of their character and put little spins on stuff of how things happen. He could have easily just hand-waved, described, all right, you all show up, you arrive, and you sit down at the table. But man, this is just so much better. And some of the players don't have a big description of what they do. Something's just very simple or helped along with Brennan. And then they finally come together in this moment.
You look out at magisters, deans, and provosts of the flying city, apprentices of the Ring of Gold, and the 6 people who actually get shit done may finally, after a long day's preparation, have a moment to celebrate.
There it is, super simple and subtle, but they now are finally together after all of those separate highlight spotlights, and sometimes they overlap and 2 characters kind of touch in. I love to also do that as a side note of how to do this whole start to a campaign. You individually spotlight and then you pair them up and together, and then they all come together. So it's like phasing into the big, huge group setting. It just feels so much better. I've done this before. I've seen Brennan do this before. It's awesome. I love it. But this is 3 hours into this episode. It's a 4.5 hour long episode, and 3 hours in, they finally get to meet each other. Well, sit at the same table with each other, and they already know each other. So it's from a big perspective of how, like, oh, I'm about to run a one shot. How do the characters know each other? I'm about to start a campaign. How do the characters know each other? Like, Brennan knew that the players would all come together in this moment, and they would be here around this table, and everything else was just, they knew they had a place to go to. So Dungeon Masters as a note to try and like, all right, well, how do I start a campaign? Have some sort of moment that you know that they're going to gravitate towards, because they each have different reasons to be there. Maybe it's a certain stagecoach that they all have to get to, because this person has to get to this city for this reason, this person has a contract to go for this reason, and this person's driving the stagecoach because that's their, this person's asleep in the stagecoach because they're a drunkard or whatever it is, right? So have some sort of central moment, and then have the players arrive towards that moment, and they're all sitting around the table with each other, and then there we go. This next clip's a simple one. Then I have an overall breakdown of this whole thing with Brennan Lee Mulligan. But this is a very subtle thing where sometimes you have to go meta to be able to explain and get across something that you could not otherwise. Like it'd be hard to be like, okay guys, this guy's power. Okay, there's an NPC that arrives to the party that is Pervon, a very critical role themed from campaign 1 character that was a very powerful champion of the Raven Queen. Oh my God, super mega powerful person. But this is in the past. This is a long time ago. So they hear the name drop and everyone like freaks out that it's a name drop. Great, awesome way to, tie in previous stuff and all that. That was just an awesome move as well. Props to Brennan for that. But very well done. But it wasn't hand shoved in your face and all that kind of stuff. It was just a super subtle thing. And then he's like weaved in there. So anyway, there's a moment of how do I get across this thing for my players? Sometimes you need to go meta to explain something to the player sitting at the table so that they can understand it as their character. Does that make sense? I have explained and expressed certain dice, certain mechanics, certain saves. If I would have, this is basically so bad, I wouldn't have even asked for a check for it. And like something to where you say a mechanic like a literal numbered mechanic in the real world to be able to put the players in the headspace to truly understand how powerful or not powerful this person is, right? So they can approach it correctly. So this clip is him talking about that NPC Pervon.
I will tell you, out of game, truly, this guy's like probably like 7th or 8th level. He doesn't. He's not glowing with tons of. He's not. He's not.
We all know who he is.
No.
Okay, yeah. So love it, and like they're okay. I see, because this person is a great, super powerful, etc. But okay, so he kind of clarifies where their heads are at. He's like 7th level, so he's like solid, but like nothing crazy. You know what I'm saying? So I love the meta application of explaining a behind the scenes mechanic basically to them so they can have a pulse check and understand. And also for the record, these people, these 6 players, are 14th level. So them explaining Pervon is 7th level puts him below them, which is also an interesting just feeling for them as well, to think this person and they are powerful than someone who will become, all that kind of stuff. So I am excited for Brennan Lee Mulligan to be a dungeon master on Critical Role, even if it's only for 3 or 4 episodes. I am all in. I will be doing breakdowns on these every single week for all of that. I hope these breakdowns help you become a better dungeon master and inspire you to think differently about your games, whether it's you're starting a campaign and how to do that, as Brennan just did just now, or if you want to kind of put your players on the spot and really challenge them. And if you want to take your game even more to the next level with homebrew resources, DM tools at your disposal through my DC playbooks I give my patrons each and every month. Tons of stuff every month to help you cut down on game prep, get you some monsters, NPCs, homebrew rules, enchanting systems, potion systems, which is the new one coming out soon, and more. And a shout out to some next level patrons would be Gabe Wilcott, Nathaniel Moore, Jawad, William Lindsay, Ricardo Sanfins, Hunter Kuznick, Potato, and Empress Shuvi. Big thank you to you guys and everyone else who supports what I do here. Thank you. But I do now want to show a secret sneak peek into some art from Alkender's Almanac that ties directly into Brennan Lee Mulligan and Matt Mercer with the whole Critical Role thing. This is honestly from my heart. Alkender's Almanac is the book that I'm writing. It's just almost finished. It's getting really close. A lot of things are coming close. I have a big announcement coming. We're almost at 40,000 subscribers, and Alkender's Almanac is about to release all around the same time, which is kind of crazy. But in this book, I have a dedication piece to a lot of different people that have impacted me and helped make this whole thing possible. One of those people is Brennan Lee Mulligan. I have reached out to him individually to thank him, and also, of course, Matt Mercer and this whole Critical Role thing that we have all been able to help and learn from. And you might have even yourself came to D&D from Critical Role. So to have this whole moment and to see this episode with Brennan being the Dungeon Master at Critical Role was just a big moment for me personally. But this is a cropped image of something in Alkender's Almanac in homage and thanks to Matt and Brennan for what they've done and how they've influenced me as a Dungeon Master. Here it is right here. But basically it is Matt DMing at a table. And if you're wondering who this werewolf is, that is Brennan Lee Mulligan's character. It's his favorite NPC that he's played. It's called Jawbone from Dimension 20. Absolutely great character. I asked him what his favorite character was of who he'd want to represent him at this table, and there it is. I'll show the rest of the clip and who else is sitting at this mystery table later, but I just wanted to again say thank you to Brennan, thank you to Matt for everything. I've been able to be a better Dungeon Master, and it's also a really crazy at a meta level to be able to try and help other people become better Dungeon Masters from what I've learned. I hope I have in some way, even if it's just poking you to be the best version of yourself that you already are and inspiring you to do something that you were doubting yourself that you could do. Just go do it, stay creative, and keep thinking outside that box. Peace.